Hi. So I want to do another video about approximating square roots. This should be pretty quick. I don't think it's going to be that bad. When you approximate square roots, you're trying to not really get the exact number. You're trying to get kind of a guess. So it's like if you ask somebody about something and they might have an idea where they're going, but maybe they don't have an exact answer. What approximation is just you're getting close there. So the approximating square roots is kind of pretty self-explanatory to a certain extent. So for example, a square root or a square. So first off, let's think of a square. So a square, or maybe a perfect number, is if I go 0 times 0, obviously I get 0. Well, if I go 1 times 1, I get 1. If I get 2 times 2, I get 4. If I get 3 times 3, I get 9. And you can kind of see a pattern going. Well, not really a pattern, but you can kind of see what's really going on. And what you're really kind of doing, you're taking like maybe a 1 by 1 square. And this is a kind of a nice square. So like if this was 3 by 3, well, this would be 9. So you're kind of doing a perfect square kind of thing. This is like so that's kind of what this is. But let's do the operation of doing a square root. So a square root, well, really it's the opposite of squaring. So a square root symbol is this guy right there. That's a square root symbol. It looks like a division, but it's not. So this is a square root symbol. So not division. So here we go. Let's take the square root of 0. Let's take the square root of 1. Let's take the square root of 4. Now what's the square root of 0? Well, 0, because 0 times 0 is 0. So the square root of 0 gives you back 0. Well, what's the square root of 1? Well, that's just 1 times 1. What's the square root of 4? Well, that's 2. Because this is just, you're kind of just doing the opposite. But some people would say that, well, when you take the square root, you've got to have a positive or a negative. That is true. That depends on the graph. But for this video, I really don't want to focus on the positive and negative yet. So I just want to go to the approximation because we like positive numbers. We want to keep positive. So when you do the square root is really the opposite of squaring. But these are really what we call perfect numbers or perfect squares. But what happens when we don't have a perfect square, when we have something like this? Well, what if we have something like the square root of 3? Now we're kind of in trouble because we don't have a nice number. So like for example, the square root of 16, well, 4 times 4 is 16. So this is 4. Well, what about the square root of 25? Well, the square root of 25 is 5 times 5. So think of a nice square. So think of a 5 by 5 square. Well, the square root of 3 doesn't really fit into here. So we have to do what we call an approximation. So here we go. The square root of 3 is not here. But what two perfect numbers, so what two perfect, let's use square, what two perfect squares is this between? So what two perfect squares is this between? Well, one of them's 4 and the other one is 1. Not 2. Two's not up there. 2 is not a 2. Yeah, 2 is here, but it's not in one of our numbers. So now we can think about, okay, well, what two numbers? Well, here's the two numbers. Here's the two numbers. So what's the square root of 4? Well, the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 1 is 1. Well, so the square root of 3 is between 1 and 2. But which number is it closest to? And 3 is definitely closer to 4. So if our number is between 1 and 2, and the square root of 3 is closest to that one, but not quite there, your number is about maybe 1.7. Maybe. I'm just taking an approximation. Some people would say 1.5, but you could do this on a calculator and you can kind of get the number. But we're not doing calculators right now. We're just doing what we know. So let's do some more. We got our squares and our square roots. So keep those memorized. So what about this one? The square root of 168. What about the square root of 6? We have two numbers up here. Two square roots that we can really try to find the nice square numbers. But these are not perfect numbers. Not perfect squares. They're between some two numbers. So let's figure this out. Well, we have, if you know our list of squares and square roots, you can kind of make a list yourself, look them up. But 168 is between 169 and, see, that is 13 and 144, which is 12. Those are these two numbers here and here are the next two perfect squares. So this is 12 by 12 and this is a 13 by 13. So 168 is between these two numbers. So where would you approximate that number at? Well, since 168 is almost 13, not quite 13, it's going to be about maybe 12.9. I'm just guessing, but 12.9 is probably what I would go with. So what about the square root of 6? Well, think of two perfect numbers that are closer to the square root of 6. Well, if you guessed these two here, like 4 and 9, you are correct, because this is 2 and this is 3. Not quite. So where 6 is it between? I mean, 6 is between. I mean, what number is it closest to? It's more closer to that one, because it's 2 off. This one's 3 off. So it's about maybe, I don't know, approximate. Maybe some people can say 2.4, 2.5. Okay. I'm just going to say 2.5. It's in the ballpark. It's in the ballpark. But you're just estimating. You're really trying to get, this number in front, the whole number, pretty much where it's supposed to be. So let's do some more. Hopefully this is making sense. Let's do a little higher number. Well, what about the square root of 224? Well, what about the square root of, let's try 17. So now you're kind of getting here. So think of your squares, Think of your square roots, your perfect numbers versus your square roots. So 225, if you can think bigger than this, the square root of 225 and the square root of 196. And 17, think of a bigger number that's perfect. Maybe 25. And 9. Oh, wait a second. It's not 9, is it? Try 16. So this is, 14. This is 15. So it's about 14.9 because it's closer to there. What about this one? Well, 17 is much closer to 16, so this is 4 and this is 5. So around 4 point maybe 1. I'm just guessing. So hopefully this helped a little bit, because I kind of want to show you that approximating square roots is really just taking a guess where it's at. So hopefully this helped, and watch this again. Remember, it takes time, practice, and effort.